What's up, guys? Welcome into another edition of Bogey Free for NFL. We are coming at you with some Week 8 action right now, and I am joined by Steve Halupka. You can find him on Twitter at The Real Halupka. What's going on, Steve? How are we doing tonight?
Doing all right, man. Just getting into some of this Thursday night action. Ravens, Dolphins, a real barn burner. I'm sure that
Oh,
everyone
yeah.
expected it to be. So, yeah, excited to talk some DFS.
Absolutely, man. How was your Week 7? How'd we do?
Pretty good, man. Cash has always been kind to me this year so far, so that's been a good thing. GPP is still waiting to hit the big one, but yeah, I mean, cash lineups have been pretty nice. How about yourself?
Yeah, I had a mixed bag last week. This was the first week that my cash lineup didn't really hit. I ended up breaking even and hitting a couple of a little bit more than sort of min cash and a couple of GPPs. And I had a sweat going on Monday night for a King of the Beach, but it didn't work out for me. I needed Jordan Reed just to not do anything and Vernon Davis to get everything, and it didn't quite work out. It looked good on the first drive, but it
Yeah.
it didn't pan out for me, but that's all right. It's always nice to have a reason to watch on, Monday night or whatever the hell, whatever slate you're playing. It's nice to go to the last game and have a shot. So I
That's
was
right.
all right with that. Real quick, as we're talking about Week 7, we did have I believe, a first time winner in the listener league, U of L _20. He put together a lineup of almost 164 points. He went, I'd say pretty chalky for the most part. He went with Dak and Dez. He went on to Ivory, Shady, had Rudolph in there, had Adrian Peterson, which actually hit 20% in the listener league. But then he had some low-owned guys in Ted Ginn and Adam Thielen. And yeah, he ended up taking it down. What are your thoughts on that lineup? Thought it was pretty good for for a 30-man tournament. I thought that's pretty solid, just going mostly chalk.
Yeah, it's pretty smart. I mean, there were some really good matchups in there. Dak, of course, just went off, which was beautiful. Shady got in the end zone twice, which was big. And stacking him with Dez made a ton of sense. And also got some goodness with Jarvis Landry in there too, playing against the Jets. Once Devontae Parker was ruled out, we knew he wasn't going to play. We figured there was going to be some goodness with Jarvis Landry in that game, and he certainly delivered. And then went super cheap, Nick O'Leary at tight end, and had two nice catches there as well. So, yeah, man, solid.
Absolutely. So, all right. Why don't we dive right into it? I guess we'll kick it off with some QB action like usual. It seems like there's just, I mean, looking at Fanshare right now, like these quarterbacks are getting out of control right now.
Mm-hmm.
We have some unreal love for Carson Wentz, and Andy Dalton is not far behind at the moment right now, and they're well past the closest quarterback. So, where are you going in cash this week? Are you going to play either of these guys?
I mean, it seems like Wentz is just in the absolute smash spot at home versus San Francisco, who just gave up a boatload of points to Dallas when San Francisco was at home. Philly's a 13-point favorite going against the number 29 pass DVOA defense in San Francisco. The only thing is Wentz is $7,200, so going to be tough to really get a ton of other great players in your lineup and spending 72 for Carson Wentz. But yeah, I'm digging Andy Dalton also. I hate to say it, but just the Colts so bad on defense, man. And they just lost Malik Hooker for the year. They're stud rookie free safety. So totally banged up in that secondary. Vontae Davis is grading out as one of the worst cornerbacks in the league. And AJ Green should just absolutely smash him into a million pieces. And for 5,700, really a nice value for you, especially in cash games, thinking he's a really great play. There are some really nice plays though, kind of in that middle tier from like 65 down to from like $6,000 to 6,500. I like a lot of those names. Starting off with Russell Wilson at 6,500, home favorite against Houston. Houston, of course, going to be missing J.J. Watt and Whitney Merciless as well on that pass rush. So I wouldn't expect Russell to get a ton of pressure. So really liking him in that home spot. And then also one road team, one road dog. Philip Rivers for 63, man. We think New England's defense is fixed. I don't think so. They lost Dante Hightower for the year, so their pass rush and defense overall is going to be impacted. And the Patriots are still the 28th ranked pass DVOA defense as well, according to Football Outsiders, with a pretty good solid total at 48 for the over-under in that game. So those are kind of my 4 quarterbacks. I think they'll probably be rotating.
Yeah, I can get on board with all those. I like Seattle a ton this week. I think I think people are going to be scared off because of, Houston, but don't really understand exactly what they're missing on defense right now. It's not easy to be in that spot anyway, and then you have to, travel out to Seattle and play them. As we get towards the second half of the season, we know how the Seahawks sort of begin to click usually. And they looked good against my horrific Giants last week as well. So on top of that, I mean, I don't know. I would like your thoughts on Matt Ryan too, because I'm of the mindset, like, if you told me 2 months ago that he was going to be one of the least talked about QBs at 6,800 going against the Jets, I would feel pretty good about that. At least in tournaments. I'm not going to touch him in cash. I think you got to pay down this week and go with Dalton and just eat the chalk. But as far as tournaments go, what are your thoughts on Matt Ryan this week?
Yeah, I think he's going to be really low owned because you have a couple other options around him. Like we said, Wentz at 72 and then Wilson 65, even Carr at 65 also, that are probably going to be a lot higher owned. I'm off a lot of the Falcons until they show me that they can kind of regain that form from last year. Sarkisian just doesn't seem like he gets the NFL game from an offensive coordinator perspective. Last week against the Patriots, there's no reason why Matt Ryan didn't throw for at least 250 and 3 touchdowns. It's just such a weird spot. I know there was a ton of fog and you're going to get limited your downfield passing, but yeah, that was a total spot for a ton of points and they just couldn't pull through. So I think you're right. GPP only for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even in GPPs, I'm also going to roll out some Josh McCown going the other way. I think some of his pass catchers make some sense that we'll get to a little bit later. Honestly, I like a ton of quarterbacks this week, man. Usually I'm pretty limited, but I feel like there's some decent spots. I don't know. I'm not crazy. Or I'm not down on Tyrod Taylor either. I feel like he's in a pretty decent spot against that Oakland defense at home. He has a solid floor, and he can, if he connects on a couple touchdown passes. What he throw for 270 last week, which is pretty
a lot for Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, that's showing they were taking some shots and they connected on a couple of things, and I liked what I saw out of Buffalo last week too. So, and then obviously you can go with Breeze at home too. There's nothing wrong with that either. It just seems like there's a bunch of good quarterback spots this week. So, yeah. Definitely going to be all over the map in GPP. I usually throw in 20 lineups into the play action, and I'll definitely be sort of spread out all over the place with some different stacks, which I guess we'll get to in a little bit as well. Anybody else we missed, or do you think we're good with quarterbacks?
Let's see. Just couple more names I did want to mention. Kirk Cousins playing against Dallas at home. We saw Kirk just kind of go off. Even in a losing effort, they're going to throw the ball against Dallas. That Dallas secondary is still pretty much of a mess. The only one concern would be that they're missing potentially 4/5 of their offensive line in this game. So that'd be my one concern about Cousins, but I do think he's in a pretty good spot at home here with a 50.5 over under.
Yeah, for sure. I'm on board with that. I kind of just skipped over him, and I have no interest in Deshaun Watson this week. Just stating that. Totally agree. I think people are a little too quick right now anointing him after 4 games. So, I guess we'll see what happens. If he goes into Seattle and puts up a solid game, then I'll be completely bought in. But I don't know. That's a rough spot with the defense and the shape that it's in right now. So
Yep.
Heading over to running backs. I think it's another interesting. It's an interesting week this week. I think there are some spots that make a ton of sense, and I think that there's some sort of popular plays that I am like completely not sold on. So why don't we start with some of the cheaper guys that everybody's talking about? I guess we can start with Joe Mixon. I was really, really hoping that Josh was going to be on tonight. He unfortunately had a bit of a family thing, so he couldn't join us. But if you follow at Frisco Josh Hermsmeyer on Twitter, you know his hatred for Joe Mixon, and it was hysterical today watching his timeline go through. But I think he's going to be bad chalk this week. What are your thoughts on Mixon?
Yeah, I'm off Mixon. I'm just not feeling that running game. That offensive line's a joke, and the Indianapolis run defense is actually pretty damn good. Like I know they gave a bunch of yards to T.J. Yeldon last week, but for the season they've been pretty strong. Adding Jonathan Hankins to that team, like it's a pretty stout front. The way you beat the Colts is through the air, and especially with that hooker now, like that's the way you're going to beat them up. So I'm kind of off Joe Mixon.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. I don't know. It's similar to sort of the Josh Doxson spot, which we'll get into. It's like this guy had 3 for 30 or something last week, and everybody's like anointing him the next god because Terrell Pryor isn't playing. But I'm like, we'll see what happens. But outside of that, down in this cheap range, you got the 2 Oakland running backs as well, and Richard at 4,300 and DeAndre Washington at 4,100. And again, I mean, they're going into Buffalo. So I don't feel great about that spot. Are you? And it seems like Richard is like way ahead in tags right now and is going to see a ton of ownership. So if I get a head-to-head and I'm going against Mixon and Richard, I am going to be happy as a pig in shit because there's I have no confidence in either of those guys.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, is there if you had to go one way out of the 3 of those guys, are you leaning a certain way or?
If I was going to go anyway, it'd probably be Mixon just because we think we know his workload, what it could be.
Right.
Because I just don't foresee the Raiders going into Buffalo and running the ball with any effectiveness this week. On the road, just a tough spot. Buffalo's playing damn good right now. I can't see either of those running backs doing much in the run game at all. Passing game, they could catch some balls, but not in the run game.
Yeah, and I just think it's interesting that they have been that they're this split where Richard is getting talked up so much more because they had the exact same amount of touches in the game last week. They both had 9 carries and 4 targets. So I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. Maybe this is one of those times where I'm like, maybe I'm just completely missing something, but I'm personally not seeing it. As we go up towards the top, we have Zeke and Shady coming off good weeks. Ingram up there coming off a good week. Where are you going if you're paying up for running back? What do you like up here?
It's so damn expensive. Like Zeke for 92. And Washington's really not that bad of a run defense either right now, 10th in DVOA against the run. And Dallas is on the road. I'm not going to really have Zeke in my cash games. Anyone up this high would probably be Shady just because he's so involved in all facets of the Buffalo offense, like catching the ball, running the ball. Finally got in the end zone where he was it was just a time coming for him to actually score some touchdowns. So finally got there. Oakland's rush defense is 20th in the league in DVOA. Like I'm a much bigger fan of McCoy as a slight home favorite versus Zeke or even Melvin Gordon this week.
Yeah, I think I like Melvin Gordon in tournaments this week because I think there's a reasonable shot that that they're playing from behind a lot and he sees a ton of targets, but I'm not willing to sort of stake my claim on a hopeful game script for a cash play. So Yeah, I mean, I think Gordon's in a decent spot for tournaments for sure. And then as we keep going down, we get Ingram at home. They're reasonably big favorites at their -9 right now. So is that something that you're interested in this week in cash or just tournaments, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean Ingram out of the four options, obviously for 7,400 is going to save you some salary cap space to really spend up at receiver if you want. So, and he's getting the volume. Like between him and Kamara, I mean it's been over 30 touches a game the last 2 weeks. So and plus a big favorite against Chicago. I do think that Ingram, in terms of just touches and volume, will be there again. And he's in a pretty good spot. So I think in terms of like top end cash game plays, is probably Shady and Ingram 1-2 for me.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Speaking of Kamara, I always am happy to roll him out in tournaments just because I think he has a decent floor, but also like significant upside with the amount of targets that he could see in a given week. If this game gets out of hand, I don't know that it favors him that much, but I do think that he can help them get to the point where the game gets out of hand. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things, chicken or the egg. Is it going to be, an Ingram game because Ingram scores the touchdowns, or is it going to end up as an Ingram game because Kamara scores, an early touchdown or two and puts them way ahead? So,
right.
And 5,900 is a pretty decent price this week. It gives you some savings where you can spend up elsewhere. So I think that makes some sense as well. Outside of that, I mean, what other running backs are jumping out to you? Because as much as I love the quarterbacks this week, I'm having a lot harder of a time for running backs.
Yeah, so I've got one question for you, and that's about your boy Christian McCaffrey. Like the guy's like top 10 in the NFL in targets right now. Like for 6,200, he's going to see a ton of pass volume. What's your thoughts about that against that terrible, Tampa Bay pass defense? I'm not even worried about him running the ball because we know they're not going to be able to run the ball in Carolina. I'm just thinking he's going to probably get about 10 targets in this game, and so that floor is there, especially in cash.
Yeah, that's it's funny you mentioned that because I was cracking up yesterday when I was talking to Roger on the Fire DFS pod because I ended up like defending Christian McCaffrey, and halfway through I was like, what the hell is going on? I literally stopped him and I was just like, I don't know what's happening right now because I don't like him. Like, I don't even like Christian McCaffrey. So why I'm defending him is beyond me. But I do think that, I mean, I don't know. It's just so tough, man. Like I totally get the target floor and everything else. But there's been, think about like the close game with New England where he really sort of busted out. Didn't do much there. And then you have, what was it? The Detroit game after that. Mm-hmm. That was sort of middle of the road, right? That, I think he had like 15 points, but oh God, I mean, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can get there in cash. I mean, I'll definitely have some of him in GPPs, but I would really just rather pay up at running back, and then sort of mix in. I didn't mean like mix in.
I was just
mix in.
Did you mean Joe Mixon on that one?
Yeah. I mean, I think Chris Thompson makes a lot of sense this week, and I think it's a similar type of play where you're really going for like a straight up PPR back. Mm-hmm. And then Kamara as well, right around the same price. I don't think I'm going to have a ton of Christian McCaffrey. The more I've thought about it, I'll definitely have some of him, but I'll probably be like even with the field, like sort of right where I think ownership is going to be. I think we'll probably end up being right. I don't have a ton of conviction on him this week.
I got one more for you, and it's Dion Lewis, man, at 4,600. Like,
I love me some Dion Lewis.
I love me some Dion Lewis. He looked awesome last week in their game against Atlanta. Like, he's back to his shifty, can't tackle me with less than 3 guys self. And against a Chargers team that's one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, give me Dion Lewis, and because he can do everything for the Patriots. He is one of their backs that can run in between the tackles, run outside the tackles, and also catch passes. So for 46, I think I'd rather have him in my cash game lineups. I know I would rather have him in my cash game lineups, either Mixon, Richard, or Washington.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was thinking about it, and of course, on Tuesday night, I fall asleep before I can put in any waiver claims because it was just a rough start to the week in my school, but for whatever that's worth. But I wake up early Wednesday and I go on to, and for whatever reason, he was available in my league. So my friends who are listening right now, you're all fucking donkeys, and I can't believe that you left him on the waiver wire this week. So I was thrilled. I love Deion Lewis. Every week his touches are going up. I think it's only a matter of time before they really start getting him more involved in the passing game. The more comfortable I think he is, the more they'll be willing to get him out in space a little bit more rather than just handing off the ball. So, yeah, I love Deion Lewis this week. And he's not going to be owned because everybody's in love with Mixon and Richard and Washington. So I think that's great. And the last guy I really wanted to talk about was Theo Riddick. I love Theo Riddick. I think that or I guess he's not on the main slate, right? He's Sunday night. But still, I just wanted to bring it up because he's going to get a ton of targets this week. But yeah, other than that, I mean, can you get a feel for the Jets backfield? I feel like these guys are so cheap that it seems like it would make some sense in some ways, but I don't know. I mean, Forte's at 4,200, Powell's at 4,800. Forte seems like he's sort of the guy now. His touches have been going up every week, but I could just as easily see them go to like McGuire this week or something. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know if you have a feel for it, but I think that price is a little enticing.
Yeah, the price is nice, definitely. It just, you see flashes from both players. Forte had that awesome third down catch and run. That was pretty amazing. Breaking tackles, looking like his old self. And you also get some goodness from Bilal Powell at points as well. So I really don't have a good feel for them. I know they're home playing Atlanta, who's been a terrible run defense also, but I just don't – there's no safety there at all. So maybe, 5% in a GPP for one of these backs or a combination of two, but it's hard to really lean one way or the other. Maybe Forte just for the savings, the $600 savings over Powell.
Yeah. And then speaking of running backs in green, we should probably touch on the Eagles guys.
Yeah, you got to.
This is another spot where like I completely get what everybody is saying, but I still don't feel great about rostering Blunt.
I know. It's dirty. It feels dirty on DraftKings. It really does.
Yeah, I mean,
like
it's
just
it just seems so thin. Like if anything goes wrong in that game, like you're looking at like a 4 or 6 point performance from him. You know what I mean? Like if the game doesn't flow exactly the way that you think, and I mean, this is a little narrative-y, but I mean, San Francisco just got embarrassed, like completely embarrassed. I think it was the Action Network tweeted out a trend of like team underdogs for like double-digit points 2 weeks in a row that don't cover the first week. Like it's some outrageous like 65% clip that they cover the second week. So I don't know. I think that there's something there. I like that that Philly's home. I think that helps quite a bit. But just a guy that doesn't catch any passes, like he has 3 targets all year. He's not going to catch anything unless, I think he had a catch against the Giants, probably because everybody does everything against the Giants. But luckily, I don't have to tilt the Giants all weekend because they're not playing.
Run by, thank God. Oh my gosh.
So no, my TV is safe for another week. I won't throw anything at it. But do you have any conviction? Do you think it's worth throwing Smallwood in for some leverage, or what are your thoughts there?
I'd rather go safer with Blunt and GPPs, because he's got he's got multiple touchdown upside. Like his floor is like 2 points, like you said before, but he can also give you in this matchup like 1, 10, and 2, and really kind of make your day. So I would go that way. I just don't think Smallwood will get the volume of carries and work that would be required to really hit value anywhere. So I'd rather go blunt out of the two of them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's it for running backs, man. I mean, I think we touched on everything we needed to. The Seattle backfield's a mess. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Yeah, outside of that, I don't think there's really any like good, really great spots, home favorites or anything like that I'm interested in. So we can shoot over to wide receivers, and we can start up at the top with AJ Green. He's another guy that appears to be going to be reasonably chalky. Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts there? I think this is like a huge favorite spot, and I think there's a case to be made either way. So where are you landing on AJ Green this week?
I think it's a cash game must. Like this Colts defense is just so putrid on the outside. Like I can't think of any other words to describe them. I'm like running through just how crappy they are in my head and trying to figure other words to describe how bad this defense is. But yeah, like there's no reason why he shouldn't have double-digit targets and at least 90 in a touchdown. Like I think he's just a total cash game lock this week.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, stacking him up with Dalton obviously makes sense. If you guys are listening and you go over to bogeyfreedfs.com, I put together a sort of like stacks cheat sheet and sort of came up with like my own way of figuring all that out. But Indianapolis is 26th against the quarterback wide receiver stack according to what I put together. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I am concerned that the game gets way out of hand, and if AJ doesn't get the touchdown, that he doesn't see as many targets. But that's a risk that you run in lots of spots like this. So I don't think you should overthink it. And as we go down a little bit, we have Julio, Evans, Dez, Michael Thomas, who returned to a limited practice today. I know he missed. People were a little nervous. He missed Wednesday. But he returned and got some work in as far as I heard today. And then Hopkins and Allen above 7K still. So, I mean, I think I know where you're going, but who do you like out of this range?
Yeah, I mean, for 7K and above, I'm in on Keenan Allen. Like, going to be a volume and target monster against the Patriots underneath. Like, he's going to be the chain mover and probably a pretty big comeback effort for the Chargers in New England. So I'm all on Keenan Allen this week for 73. I think he's a great play. Higher up than that, man, I'm not feeling Julio still. Like, he's just not getting the ball. Like, even last week after he bitched and moaned about not getting the ball, he still didn't get it, which I was just shocked that he didn't get like 12 targets in that game. Mike Evans, we saw what he could do against a pretty good defense last week in Buffalo, but I think Julio, Evans, and Bryant and Thomas also are all GPP plays. I'm not playing them in cash.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's time to start having a conversation. I thought that a lot of the sort of like negative sentiment around Dez with Dak was a little premature, but I think we have enough of a sample now where he is not sort of hitting the same efficiency. Like Dez isn't reaching the efficiency that Dak shows with everybody, like across the board. He's averaging the same amount of targets that he has for his whole career, and he's scoring like 4 less PPR points a week. There's something there. Obviously he has, 2 touchdown upside anytime in any single game. He can score a couple touchdowns, but just as like an automatic lock, I think that's a mistake. I think people are going to go back to Julio this week after they saw the, you got mossed nonsense or whatever. That touchdown catch was pretty sick. But like you said, the usage isn't there. And Sarkisian seems like I was gonna make a bad like drinking joke, but I decided not to. It just seems like he doesn't know what the hell's going on, honestly. I mean, for that team to have dropped the way that they have on offense is kind of ridiculous. And I'm fully with you on Keenan. So if we're talking about Keenan, we can also talk about the other side of the ball there with Cooks and Hogan. Are you going to be targeting those guys? I mean, I know it's not they're at home and they're favorites, but it's not really the best spot to be going against the Chargers secondary. So what are your thoughts on them?
Chargers secondary has been dope this year. Like all three spots, like they've been so good. I mean, their pass rush has improved. Their secondary with the addition of Desmond King in the slot, like they've been doing real well. I think out of the pass catchers for Brady, I'm either sticking with one of the running backs or Gronk. Like I'm not really on any of the receivers this week. So yeah, it's just not something I'm feeling at all.
Yeah, it feels a bit like whack-a-mole, right? I feel like it's been all over the place, and I can't. There's no like narrative that I can follow. There's no rhyme or reason. It just seems like it's always going to be that way. I think people will be off of. I guess we'll get to that in tight ends, but we can talk about that in a sec. But outside of that, up in this upper range, I'm thinking that people are going to be. I don't know. What are you thinking about Amari this week after that huge blow up week? But they're going to Buffalo. Like it's a tough spot. I don't know. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just watching Joe Flacco get destroyed. He just slid and probably got his head knocked off. He's out on his feet. Sorry. Just got absolutely murdered by Kiko Alonso. A dirty hit as he's sliding. But yeah, I mean, Amari, the great thing for him, they put him in the slot. Like they put him in a slot for 35%, I think, of snaps. So it was pretty great to see them move him around a bit, get some easier coverage, so he wouldn't have to go against the number one receiver, or number one corner, I should say, in the vast majority of his snaps. So if they're going to use him all over the field for 6,600, Buffalo obviously was able to get thrown against last week by Tampa. So I think he's not a bad play in GPPs especially. I'm not a big fan of him in cash. In this range, I'm kind of on Kelvin Benjamin against that dreadful Tampa secondary for 6,400. I think he's a much better play than Cooper or Hogan, which are a couple $100, more expensive than he is.
Yeah, for sure. And staying with that game, I think Deshaun Jackson is in a pretty good spot too. I think anytime you can get him in a GPP is worth it, especially at this price. I mean, 5,100. He's right next to Mohamed Sanu, who's being talked up way more. So if you can get him at relatively low ownership, I think that makes a lot of sense. He's kind of sandwiched between Nelson Aguilar, who's also being talked up quite a bit, and Sanu. So low ownership with a guy with that ceiling, I think makes a lot of sense in tournaments. Not a cash play by any means, but I think that makes some sense. And then, I mean, if we're going to be paying up for a couple of those running backs and we want to hopefully get AJ in, we got to find some cheapos here. So is there anybody that you really, really like? I think I have a certain Pittsburgh.
My boy, I've been trying to play him every single week when I can. Give me some of that juju. Like he's just he's in a good spot, man. I mean, with Martavis Bryant going to be benched this week, I'm really digging Juju Smith-Schuster, even though he's not on the main slate for DraftKings. Like if you're playing an extended slate, I definitely would have him in my cash lineups as well. But for main slate, I'm looking at a couple of the Jets receivers, Robbie Anderson, and also Jermaine Kearse. Give you some savings, 4,200 for Anderson, 48 for Jermaine Kearse. McCown is spraying the ball around to a lot of his targets, including ASJ, but Kearse scored a touchdown last week. He's looking good. He's been the chain mover for him. And that Atlanta secondary is just not playing well this year. Like that whole team is just disappointed. Yeah. It really is pretty shocking, the kind of hangover from the Super Bowl last year. So I like both those plays. Was there anybody else kind of in that like 4,500 range and lower that you're liking?
I mean, it's kind of tough. I wish that Jordan Matthews was healthy. Mm-hmm. He clearly just wasn't with it last week. I think in tournaments, I think Marquise Goodwin makes a little bit of sense. I think he came up on the injury report with a back thing, but I think he was still practicing this week. So I don't think he's in danger of missing it. What do you have? 4 for 80 or something last week? He seemed to have a pretty decent rapport with Beathard. So I think that's some decent leverage off of Doxson Doxson ends up being sort of the more heavily owned guy down in this range, considering he has double the start tags on FanShare that Goodwin has. I think he makes a lot of sense in tournaments. I think Gruden came out today and said like they're going to ride the hot hand with wide receiver, like whatever
which is ridiculous. That That's such a ridiculous statement.
It's like the weirdest. I don't know. I'm so over all this like coach speak nonsense. I'm just like I can't. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything to anybody who knows like what happens in a football game. Like
no, so like if Cousins doesn't throw you the ball for a quarter and a half, it means you're sitting the rest of the game. Is that what that means? Like
right, exactly.
Who the hell knows? It's insane. It's insane.
And then I did want to bring up Deontay Thompson. He seemed, I mean, he's on the team for 5 days, and he seemed like the wide receiver one. Like, I don't know, 3,700 against that defense at home in a pretty good spot. I think that makes some sense in tournaments as well.
Yeah, man. No, totally agree on that call. I think he actually played with Tyrod at some point. I think maybe in Baltimore for a season or two before Tyrod went to Buffalo. So they do have some familiarity there. And if J-Matt's not going to be healthy yet, yeah, give him a shot. 3,700, man, for GPP. I'd much rather have him than scum of the earth Zay Jones. So.
Yeah, and I think if you saw that, I think they tweeted out a picture on Sunday morning of the contraption on Jordan Matthews' hand. Like, you understand why he can't catch a ball. Like, he had
it's like something from Saw. It's like crazy, dude.
Yeah, it's like he had thumb surgery. Of course, he's not going to be like able to catch anything. What the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that does it. So we can head over to the. I mean, talk about a gap in pricing on the main slate, right? I mean, you have Gronk and Ertz at 7,100 and 7K, and then you drop all the way down to 4,900 for the next tight end. So, I mean, I know I want to stack Wentz with Ertz and Brady with Gronk, but it's just like, I don't know if I can afford it this week, So what are your thoughts at those two guys up at the top?
I mean, I think that to make those two stacks, I think they're definitely not like cash game stacks. Like I would love to put it, but the rest of your roster is just going to be so thin compared to like what you want to play and the matchups you want to exploit. You're going to have to take chances on like one of the two Jets guys, Deontay Thompson, Dion Lewis, and maybe one of the Oakland backs. Like it's going to have to be a roster construction like that. Versus, paying down at 4,800 for Hunter Henry, who I think is in an awesome spot against New England, and really starting to get a ton of work in this passing game, and really starting and being kind of that mid-price tight end versus paying up 7,000 or 7,100 for Gronk or Ertz.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in general this is a week where it makes a lot of sense to just sort of spread yourself out at tight end, because with these prices, like having yourself between 4,800 and I don't know, say like you definitely don't want to go under 3K, but so say 4,800 to 3,000. I mean, most of these guys can flash some upside and score a touchdown and end up being like the tight end 4 on this slate. You know what I mean? Like it's completely reasonable that like an Austin Hooper could score 2 touchdowns, or, whatever, insert your random garbage tight end here. And it's like, it's kind of like playing roulette. Like you're hoping for the best. I mean, Beathard Kittle never saw the field last week, or he saw the field, but he didn't see any targets last week, which was like, everybody was thinking that was going to be a thing. So, I think people will be completely off him this week, which will probably be the right play, but I'll definitely have him in a lineup or two just in case, because it only takes 2 catches at 3,600 if he finds the end zone and has a decent, say like a 30-yard touchdown or something. He's coming right up on value already. So tight ends are kind of I'm not putting that much thought into tight end this week. I'm just sort of spreading it out and hoping that I put them together with somebody that's worth rostering in my lineup.
Yeah, I mean, one just leverage play. Tyler Croft for 3K for Cincinnati. Yep. If you're pivoting off AJ and looking for someone who's, again, got that 2 touchdown upside potentially in a good spot, I like Tyler Croft.
So much leverage. AJ Green is going to be ridiculous this week as far as ownership. So that makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I guess we can touch on defenses this week. Obviously, you just got to go back to the GOAT Bears, right? They're
the GOAT Bears.
They're going to score, 3 defensive touchdowns this week of 80+ yards, just like last week.
So ridiculous. so ridiculous. Yeah, I think Eagles are obviously super chalky this week at home against San Francisco. Cincinnati, chalky again too. And actually the opposite side of that matchup in the Saints, just they're forcing turnovers like crazy. And Mitchell Trubisky, they may not have Trubisky throw it a bunch, but when he does, if he does, expect at least 1 or 2 turnovers from that Saints defense. Those are the 3 kind of that I'm liking right now.
Yeah, for sure. Outside of that, I don't know. Could you make a case for going to the? I know they're not a good defense in the slightest, but Carolina looked bad last week, and I could see 2,600 for a defense. I don't really mind it. You get a couple of sacks, and you can kind of be off to the races there and save some money in a tight week. I don't think it's the best play, but in a tournament, I think you can do worse than picking on Cam after the week that he had last week. Outside of that, it's just really gross, man. It's really hard to really talk yourself into any of these defenses. So I'm probably just going to be spreading it out. Hopefully, the Eagles hit, and I won't be too far behind the pack with everything else going on.
There you go. Yeah, man, I totally agree.
All right, so why don't we hit some stacks and call it a night? Anything that you're just you gotta have in at least one lineup?
Yeah, I think Dalton AJ Green's gonna be super chalky this week. I wouldn't be shocked if they're 15 to 20% at least in the Million Maker. One that I like also this week, and I think you can keep playing, Russell Wilson and Doug Baldwin. They showed it last week against the Giants. They're kind of clicking again. So Russell Wilson and Doug Baldwin, I think I like that one too. We talked about Wentz and Ertz. We talked about Brady and Gronk. Let's see who else. Ty Gott and LaShawn McCoy too. I think that's a good one. There's so much of their offense runs through those 2 players right now. I think you'll get a ton of potential upside against that Oakland defense, who's not exactly great. And then Rivers and Keenan Allen, I think you got to have that at least one play of that as well.
Yeah, and I think Rivers and Henry makes some sense too.
Mm-hmm. You can triple stack. You can really triple stack it if you really want to.
Oh yeah, and then you can run it. You can do a couple of those and run it back with both outside receivers for New England and hope for the best. And you could be off to the races if that game goes over. So I think that's an interesting game to stack up in general. Mm-hmm. As far as I think you hit on a lot of the ones that I really like, as far as just straight up, game stacks altogether, I think you can go really any direction with the Washington-Dallas game. I think that's going to be pretty popular, but I think there's a reason for it, so I don't mind it. And then I don't know. I think this is such an interesting week. We didn't really talk about it at the top, but this is an interesting week because really the main slate, the totals are all within 4 points of each other. There's no really gross game because the grossest game that's going to happen this weekend is being played in London. So it doesn't matter. And although the game that's on right now is pretty gross too. It's 20-0 Baltimore right now at the moment. So I think that makes, that makes a lot of, you hit on some sort of slightly lower owned stacks, and I think you're really going to make some money this weekend. So, with that, just make sure that you are checking out both of us on Twitter. I'm at Matt Jones TFR. Steve is at The Real Halupka. Make sure you check out Bogey Free DFS. I am almost done with my game-by-game breakdown. It is probably still going to be 3,000 words this week.
Nice.
even though there's only 9 games. But yeah, it was like 3,600 last week, which was just a nightmare. But yeah, other than that, good luck to everybody this week. Steve, thanks for joining me again.
Thanks, man.
And we'll talk soon. See you.